Okay, so today I want to talk about the people of Yahweh. Okay, what Yahweh chooses, the fact that everyone has to work out, make their election sure, and there is an elect that he talks about, and of course, this elect that he talks about, they have to be a peculiar people because that's what he's saying. He said, he's going to make your nation of priests a peculiar people. Now, this priest, people may think, well, okay, well, you're going to be, doing something like the Catholic Church, the Pope, or something like that, or the Cardinals. But that word priest is actually a servant. That's actually what he's talking about. You being a servant to your fellow man. That's actually that's the job that we have to do on the planet. And when we wake up, like he told Kiefer, when you have become converted, this is what you do. You have to present what you know to your brothers and sisters so they could become converted, because this is what the whole thing is about. It's helping others to realize who they are so they could actually return home. Really, that's what it is. Now, what I'm going to talk about today, we're gonna probably go to some sightings, some court sightings, because what your father is asking you to do something, and we have to pretty much look at it and weigh that thing. We have to weigh what's being said, because it's not easy. It's not going to be easy to do what he's asking. Definitely not. And as we wake up and we start to see more and more what it's all about, it's going to be a situation as there's a choice that has to be made, because there's certain things that he tells us. Now, if we go over to First Kepha, it's going to be my first scripture, First Kepha, or First Peter, chapter 2. Okay, and we're going to read verse 9. And this is who we're supposed to be, or what we're supposed to be becoming. In verse 9 he says, "But you are a chosen generation." It says a royal priesthood. Now, you're only royal because of your father, okay, your heavenly Father, and this priesthood is not going around doing sacrifices or holding a chalice, and just doing rituals and ceremonies. That's not what it's talking about. Okay, if the job calls for that, well, that's what you do. Okay, but this priesthood is a servant. Okay, you and I serve man, and at the same time that we're serving man or mankind, we are serving our Father, because our Father, mankind actually makes up your Father. So it says a holy nation, and there's a key word there, and that key word is holy. A holy nation. Holy means set apart. It means separate. You got to be. Okay, just as the children of Israel had the tribe Levite, and Levite was not supposed to inherit anything as the rest of the children of Israel were, but their inheritance was going to be something different, something separate, and that inheritance was going to be, Yahweh said, it's going to be him. It's going to be his consciousness. So the priest could direct the forces and direct the rest of the people, the nation, into wherever Yahweh wanted them to go, if they stayed faithful and did what he said. So this is something that the chosen people need to do. So this is not a Moshe priesthood that's going in. No, this is a people who are waking up to certain things, and they're going to be listening to what Yahshua had to say. They're going to be receiving a certain spirit, and as they do receive that spirit, that's going to make their election sure if they act accordingly. You always have to come down to what the individual does, though. So in the next one says, a peculiar people. A peculiar people. Now, some scriptures may not say that. It may say a chosen people. Okay. It may say a special people. Okay. This one here says a peculiar people. Some may say a special possession. And so now here it goes now. He said, so a special people that you would show forth the praises to him who has called you out of darkness into his light. So this is the thing. This is why you become peculiar. Okay? That means when you're peculiar, you're different than other people. But peculiar also means that you're chosen for a special purpose, which is going to be his purpose. And so if this purpose now is going to cause you and I, if we choose to follow that, to start waking up, because we become receptive to that light that we have been talking about here for a while now. Okay? So when we become receptive to that light, as it comes in, it starts to move the darkness that's within us from just our fall. It starts to move that out of the way that we could actually ascend. We could actually return home. This is what it is. So in this now, of course, you're in this world, and in this world, a lot of times, in generations that pass, this world does not recognize that which your Heavenly Father has told you to do. Unless you and I now go and we proclaim this. We have to state it. Now, in the times of Yeshua, remember Yeshua, he would tell his apostles, so that you do not offend them, that is, go and do so and so and so and pay your taxes. So this was so you didn't offend them. Now, today, there's a whole different thing. Because today, you had a founding fathers that your Father in heaven set up. This is all orchestrated. Your Father in heaven had men hundreds of years ago fight for this nation, and he influenced those men. I know they were Masons, but Masons don't mean that they're bad. Okay? It just means there's a certain order that they were in. But these men, okay, they were into serving their Father as much as they knew how to, no different than Abraham, no different than Moshe, no different than the apostles. And this is all coming to a certain place. It's taking steps. Now, so what these founding fathers felt, that faith and doctrine and the fact that they did not want government, especially Britain or the British, to interfere with what they felt were right based upon what they thought their Heavenly Father was teaching them. And so you and I have to come to the same place, because that's what they set up in this new nation. This new nation that they founded, they said, no, we're not going to do what the British did to us. No, we're going to find a Declaration of Independence, and we're going to proclaim here or declare that all men are created equal. And if they want a government over them, they're going to consent to this government if they want it over them. And the duty of this government is to protect their rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, property. This is what the Heavenly Father led the founding fathers to do. Now, what they have done now, they have set religion, and you may not know this, but they have set religion as totally separate from government. But today you wouldn't know that. You hear them talk about it all the time. There's a separation of church and state. Okay? You always hear this, but you don't really know what that means. You're not knowing that that's meaning that, hey, church or religious people, religious persons, don't go interfering with the secular government, and the secular people or government don't go interfere in what the government of church, if you will, or government of those who are separated unto Yahweh, which is holy unto Yahweh, what they want to do. And when you go before these guys today, they don't know. Okay? So it's like you have to work to wake them up, but you have to show them what the Father said. You have to show them what their Constitution said, because they'll read it and it's still not clicking. And then show them at the same time what case laws that the Supreme Court of the United States has put down, laid down for you and I to walk through. It's like clearing the Red Sea so you can walk through, but nobody else can. Okay? Because if anybody else tries to go through there, the walls are going to close in on them. This is the path that your Father is showing you, but you know, we can't just do what we want to do. We have to do what He said to do in this. So now, let's go over to Genesis, and we're going to look at the history from Abraham coming up, okay? And let's go to Genesis 17 and verse 9. Okay. In verse 9 here it says, "And Yahweh said to Abraham, As for you, you must keep my covenant. You must keep my covenant. You and your descendants after you throughout your generations." Now, who does that include? Now, if you may say, well, I'm not Abraham's seed, but I'm going to tell you that you are. Because Abraham's seed, Yahweh told Abraham that his generation was going to be the seed for everybody on the earth. Because through his seed, all the nations were going to be saved. So his seed was going to go into all nations. Okay? Even though the children of Israel came out from Abraham, okay, under Jacob, well, you have Ishmael with Abraham too. Okay, and Ishmael's, they scattered all over the place. You had the children of Israel, they went to a certain point and they split, and you hear that 10 tribes were lost and they were scattered into the Gentiles, actually, and they became as the Gentiles. But they're going to be called back out because their bloodline, Abraham's bloodline, is in there. So his descendants are going to be in that too. So the descendants are being called out. And there is a certain energy that's within the descendants. And it's in their blood. And there's a reason why these guys today, they don't want to tell you what your blood type is, because they're looking for a certain blood type or a certain genetic code, because they don't want these genetic individuals, or these individuals who have this genetic code, to wake up. This is why when you look at these films, as far as vaccines are concerned, vaccines affect a certain population more than any other population. Okay? There are certain things that's within a certain people, and it doesn't have to be black. It's not a black thing because it's in white, Hispanic, it's in Abraham's gene, and his blood type is in, or what his genetic code is in all people of the nation. So Yahweh is telling you that you could keep Abraham's covenant. Okay? This is a covenant that was made, and he says, with you and your descendants, you shall keep this. Now remember, he's going to make a peculiar people out of you if you're going to keep this covenant. Okay? But we have to know what this covenant is, because this covenant doesn't stop with Abraham. Abraham did the best he could, but there is more than Abraham, because Moshe brought in more than Abraham. Okay? And he brought symbols in it. And also Yahshua now came and he tried to tell you what it's all about, from Abraham all the way, actually from Noah all the way up, even before Noah. He's trying to tell you what the whole plan of the whole thing is. Now, when you come together, there's something else we have to know. Let's go to Exodus chapter 12. Okay? Because everyone could do as they please. But above, there is one government above. Everyone is not scattered doing their own thing. There is order. There's a particular order in heaven And no one is forced to follow that order. Everyone accepts, the job that they're going to do, and they do it just like the members of your body will do something. Your toe is not trying to be a kneecap. It's not. Okay? Your eye is not trying to be the toenail or vice versa. It's not. Everybody accepts their job and they come together and they make a whole body. Now this is how it's set up above. It's set up just as we saw those spirits that came out of the individual in the Grenadines and jumped into the pigs. He said his name was Legion because there were many. But when Yahshua addressed that spirit, those demons, notice he didn't address many. He addressed singular, but they were all in a body. Now, when someone is going to address you, they don't address many, but you're made up of many. Okay? You have many members in that body. Well, those many members in one body, all that really comes down to be is a pattern of that which is above. Because your Father above has many members, called many houses, many mansions, many offices in all these mansions or whatever in the kingdom. You have a whole bunch, but it's one body. It's one universal body. So this one universal body, now we have to look at that universal body, and what we set up upon the earth is going to be according to what is above. That is your covenant. Your covenant is to follow your Father's command, and Yahshua set it out to you in this manner. He tells you it's going to be according to what your Father has shown you and what you have heard coming from him, because he's going to direct what he wants you to have, when he wants you to have it, and what you're going to do with it. So he's not going to give you more than you need at this time. He's going to give you exactly what you need for the time, because he's going to teach you. But when you come to know what is truth in a certain area, or what you believe to be truth in a certain area, you and I have to exercise this. We can't just leave it. We have to exercise that. Now, in Exodus chapter 12, okay, let's look at verse 49. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 49. It says, one law. Not a whole bunch of laws. That means everyone doesn't do what they want to do. Everyone functions under the same policy. Okay? One law shall be for you, or shall be for the native born, and for the stranger who dwells among you, someone who comes amongst you to live amongst you or convert to whatever you're doing. It's one law. It's not one law for that individual and then a separate law for you. No, it's going to be functioning as a body. Has to be functioning as a body. Now, so here, this is why the children of Israel got blessed for a time. It says, in verse 50, it says, thus all the children of Israel did just as Yahweh commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. Okay. So now, they did exactly what Yahweh told them to do, the children of Israel. Now look at the next verse. And it came to pass, not right then, it came to pass, okay, on that very same day, in that same time period, because this is how it's going to work for you, okay, because it doesn't mean that, well, today you do what Yahweh says, and today, this very same day, something happens. No, it's a time period. This is going to be happening, okay. How it's written here is that very same day, but you and I have to look at it. When we do the work, the will of Yahweh, is it going to be happening right then? You do this, it happens right now. No, in time, it comes to pass. Okay, so in this book, though, it came to pass on that very same day, the time, that Yahweh brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, or you would say out of the influence of errant behavior. if we do what he said to do, what we have seen and heard coming from him, it will come to pass that he will remove us from the influence of errant behavior, errant thoughts. Okay? This is something that's going to happen. Division by division. He brings everyone out. Now, we're going to go to 19, chapter 19. Okay? and this is what he tells us to do here, or this is the results of it. Look in verse 5, chapter 19 and verse 5. Okay? 19 and verse 5. It says, now, therefore, if you will truly obey my voice, which is my commandment, one law, my voice, my commandments, the law, statutes, judgments, commandments, okay? Statutes, judgments, commandments, ordinances, all that. By keeping my covenant, that which you hear coming from him, and you see as an example, then you shall be a special treasure. This is a peculiar people also. You should be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth belongs to me. All of it is mine. So he's saying, keep my covenant. Is it the covenant that Abraham was shown? Well, it's not the covenant by letter. It's the same covenant, because the covenant was before Abraham, but it's not by letter. Is it the same covenant that Moshe showed you? Well, yes, and no also, because it's not by letter. But Moshe told you that covenant, that which he's given you, is already in you. You don't have to go to the highest of heavens to get it, or the depths of the seas to get it, or go to the ends of the earth to get it, because he's telling you it's already in you. You and I have to wake that up. And Yahweh is telling you and I, if we do what he says to do, that is going to be awakened. It's going to be awakened. It's a natural course. Okay? He's going to remove us from darkness into that marvelous light. That's something that's going to be taking place based upon what you and I do. If you and I become receptive in our own darkness to the light, guess what happens over time when the light starts to come in? As the light starts to come in, darkness don't like light. It moves. You go into a room that's full of darkness at midnight and turn on the light and see if the darkness doesn't vanish. It goes. This is the same concept. You could look at it in your meditation. Okay, you want to get rid of darkness. You look at it in your meditation and see the very same thing happening. Okay, you look at yourself and see dark things that may be in there, and you see yourself turning on the light of the glory of your Father and seeing that thing moves. Well, it will come to pass over time too that the same thing will be happening in your space, in your life. Now, don't think it's just going to happen and the Father's not going to bring some kind of trials to you. Be glad for the trials. Okay? Be glad for the trials. But know that the trying of your faith, or what you believe to be, is, the truth here and what you need to walk. Know that the trying of that faith is going to give you endurance, something to hold on to, something to last with. It's going to give you something. It's a gift. Okay. So here we're looking at it now. So this covenant, we have to take this covenant. And this covenant is something that conforms us to Yahweh's every word, because that's what you're doing. You're looking at what you see and what you hear coming from your Father. This is service. They call this worship. Okay, let's go over to Luke chapter 4. They call this worshiping your Father. Okay, but worshiping your Father is simply doing what he says. It's not necessarily going to church and showing up and sleeping, or whatever the situation may be when folks go to church and they think they have done their good deed for the month or for the week. No, there's something that has to be done. Okay, so in chapter 4 of Luke, let's look at verse 8. It says, but Yahweh answered and said to her, or said to the devil, or him. Okay, so Yahshua answered this and said to the devil, you get away from me, Satan. For it is written, Yahweh your Father you must reverence, and some may say Yahweh your Father you shall worship, okay, and him only you must serve, and him alone you shall serve. So this is the covenant. This is part of the covenant that you're given. That's part of the covenant that lives within you. When you receive the light, you're not going to listen to another voice. You're going to hear what is coming from your Father and see the examples that comes from your Father, and you're not going to listen to another. You're not going to take the examples from another, and nothing that you hear someone comes to you now and start saying, they may have certain things that are true, but at some point they may get into a place now that they start to speak to you in areas that Yahweh has not shown that to you. It doesn't mean that you drop whatever your Father is saying and jump on the bandwagon. No. Stay with what your Father has shown you until he shows you the proof of it. If you're in doubt, just don't follow every wind of doctrine. If you're in doubt, you don't see it, hey, hang fast to what your Father has shown you, because that's where he has you. Okay? Don't feel that, okay, to be accepted by your Father, you have to do more here, you have to do more there, you have to take a leap of faith into something that you don't really know about because someone else is saying what it should be, but you're in doubt of what your Father is saying there, because there are other things saying, well, the Father may not be saying that. Hold your own. Hold the place. Okay, so Luke chapter 4 is telling us that Yahweh alone you shall worship. Him alone you shall serve. This is the covenant. This is part of the covenant. Now we're going to go over to the law, Deuteronomy chapter 28. Okay, so we're going to Deuteronomy chapter 28. And we're going to look at verse 9. 28 and verse 9. Okay? 28 and verse 9. It says here, Yahweh will establish you as a holy people. Now notice what that is, guys. Remember, holy means separate. Separate. Just as Yahweh took Abraham away from his people and brought them into a land that he wanted to show them so they could be away from secularism, if you will, and just as he sent Moshe into the land of Egypt, or the land of error, or they call it sin, whatever, or errant behavior, and had Moshe take the children of Israel out of that land to separate them from the influence of the Egyptians and took them someplace else. This is the same thing he wants you to do. Just as he raised up Yahshua and had Yahshua go and be taught by the schools of the prophets, which the Essenes was part of that. But if you look, Eliah had already established the schools of the prophets in Kings. If you look at Kings and Chronicles, he had already done that, and it had different branches all over, and the Essenes was one of them, and Yahshua's family was part of that. They had found proof of this, guys. Okay, so the Essenes now separated themselves from the secular world, or that which the priest and them were all about. And Yahshua came up into that, and he went to different parts of the world to learn certain skills, spiritual skills. This he did. They won't tell you that because they left out a whole part of his life, from he was 12 to when he was 30. okay, or 33, to when he was 30. So they got a whole bunch of his life. But individuals have certain parts of that's written in certain text that was left as a record. A lot of it was burnt up coming up to this time, but certain governments kept, because they had it, and they kept proof of this, but they wanted to make sure that nobody else had it. So when they went around, they burnt all the books, but they made sure that they collected. So they have a library of things, but they don't want you to have that library. So they keep what they wanted to, and so the people wouldn't wake up to anything else than what they wanted the people to follow. They burnt everything else. Okay, so this is what you have here in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 9. Okay, so he's going to establish you as a holy people unto himself. Unto himself. Now, if he's going to establish you as a holy people, which is separate unto himself, that means you're probably not going to be hanging out doing the things of the secular world. This is what's going to make you a strange person, a peculiar people to the rest of the world, because you're going to be a special treasure unto something that is separate from the spirit of the world. Okay? There's a different spirit here. Notice what it says here, as he promised on oath. There's a condition though. If you will keep the laws of Yahweh your Father and walk in all his ways. And walk in all his ways. Well, here comes in verse 10 now, some of the children of Abraham, who Yahweh is going to establish him and his generations, okay, who will do the very same thing. Here they go. Then all the people on the earth will see that you are called by the name of Yahweh. This is to the children of Israel. All the people, if they will do those things, all the earth will see that they are called by a certain characteristics, okay, a certain nature. They have a certain reputation, and then they will, it says fear you here, but it's not fear, guys. They will come to respect you. And time, they will come to respect you, because they're afraid of you for doing something. So they're going to reverence you just like they would reverence their Father in heaven. Okay? That's all that's happening. Reverence you just as you reverence your Father. When your Father opens their eyes to certain things, they will see you. They're going to see you. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to fight against you at first. Now we're going to go over to Yahshua here now. Okay? To Yahshua in Matthew. Let's go to Matthew chapter 4. Okay? So Yahweh is going to establish you as a holy people unto himself, if you keep those commandments. Now, this is not necessarily Moshe or Abraham, guys, because Abraham told you someone else was coming, and that's the one that you should listen to. That one came, and that one said to you, listen, you're going to do what you see and hear coming from the Father. When you do that, you're going to receive a certain spirit. And when you receive that spirit is going to show you what you should do. It's going to give you testimony of that your higher person. This is what it's going to do. That's actually what the scripture is telling you when you receive that comforter. Now, we could allow the ego to come in because the ego doesn't want the comforter to come in. The ego is full of our dark selves. The self that has been caught in this lower stream of the third dimensional world. That's what it wants. It wants to hold you here. It wants to enjoy this. But your higher self wants you and I to ascend out of what we have fallen into. Okay, Matthew. Let's go over to Matthew. Okay? So Matthew now is, Yahshua is telling you and I how we receive life. Now, this life is not the life that we're living right now. breathing, hanging out here. No, the life that we fell from. In Matthew chapter 4, in verse 4, he says, "But he answered and said, it is written." This is again, here comes the ego coming, and this is what you and I got to answer to. You and I got to do the same thing. We got to turn off ego or answer ego in the same manner. It is written. Well, how do we answer it is written if we don't even know what's written? How do we answer what's written if we're listening to somebody else that's telling us to walk in a contrary way? How do we know it's written if we don't know the covenant? We don't follow anything about it, but we want to follow the ego. It is written, man does not live by bread alone. The food that you put in your mouth to keep your stomach full? No. You and I don't live by bread alone, or by things that satisfy the flesh or the physical man, but by every word. This is the instruction that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh as stated in the law. This is what's stated in the law. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy 8 and verse 3 real quick. We're going to go back in the law. Deuteronomy 8 and verse 3. Okay? And this is what he does for you now. This is what he does for us. Because he can't have you and I come in with ego. Ego is of the earth. It functions through the spirit of the earth, of the world. And the God of this world has hijacked ego. Now, ego is the lower nature that you and I have, and we got to get rid of that. That's the darkness that's within us. Okay, now, we don't have to get rid of ego, but we got to get rid of that which influences ego. Because we want ego's energy, we just don't want ego's energy with dark influences. We want to cleanse it. So in Deuteronomy 8:3, notice what he says here. So he humbled you. This is a must. We can't go in there unless we're humbled. And allowed you and I to hunger and feed us with manna. Manna is a representation of spiritual food. Spiritual food. Joshua said, your fathers ate manna in the wilderness and they died. He said, what I'm giving you right now is the true manna that descends from heaven. It's spiritual food. Okay, so you humble them, okay, which you did not know of, nor did your fathers know of it, so he might make you to know that man does not live by physical food or the desire of the world, okay, that which is the pleasures of this life, anything like that, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh does man find life. That's the only way we're going to do it. Now, part of that, he's telling you, is to become holy. To be part of those elects, you have to do something, and part of what we have to do is to become holy. Now, let's go over to Yahshua the Apostles now, okay? We're going to read some writings of Shaul, or, okay, some verses from Shaul. And this is 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Now, this is going to be very powerful, and it's going to apply to you and I today. And as it applies to us, we can't close our eyes to it. We gotta be ready for the call. And if we're not ready for the call, we have to pray about it so we can become ready for the call. Because this is what's going to make your election sure. Okay? It's going to make your election sure. Let's look at this for a minute. Okay? So 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Let's look at verse 14. It says, do not be unequally yoked or bound or binded with somebody together with unbelievers. Now, how much of the world believes what you believe? How about the government of this world today? Do they believe what you believe? Yet, the apostle here is saying, do not be unequally yoked, bound with them. Okay, being the same thing. For what fellowship or what participation has righteousness with unrighteousness? And what fellowship or participation does light have to do with darkness, or that which is against the laws or the word of Yahweh? Yahweh tells you, hey, that we shouldn't seek after certain things, Baal, for instance. But the governments of this world, they are promoting Baal. He tells that we shouldn't have our children go to the fire to Molech, but the governments of this world is doing that. It tells us that we shouldn't deal with the Queen of Heaven, but the governments of this world is having you do that right now. It says that, hey, we shouldn't deal with homosexuality in the manner in which you're seeing today. The government of this world is pushing that upon you, forcing that down your throat. Well, what participation do you have with that? What fellowship do you have with that? Well, we got to make a choice. So it says here now, and what harmony or agreement can there be between Messiah, or the government of Yahweh, or the Son of Yahweh, the only begotten Son, and Belial, which are the sons of the evil one? Or what share does a believer have with an infidel? And what agreement does the house of Yahweh have with the house of gods? For we are the house of the living Father, as Yahweh has said, I will dwell in them. Now, how does Yahweh dwell in you? The scripture tells us that Yahweh is light. Yahweh is light. Well, how does Yahweh dwell in us? Yahweh dwells in us when we allow the light to come in. And the light comes in when we do the covenant. He says, if you will keep this covenant, then this is what happens. Then the light comes in. If we don't keep the covenant, guess what? The darkness is going to be around. It's a natural thing. No one has to stand up on cloud 9 and make it happen. It's happening. It's a natural thing. Okay. It says, I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their father, or their teacher, or their guardian, and they will be my people. Therefore, notice what it's saying now, guys. This is powerful right here. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, as I told Abraham to do, as I told the children of Israel to do coming out of Egypt, as I did with Yeshua, and he had his apostles separate. He's telling you and I the same thing. He says, therefore come out from among secularism and be separate. That simply means holy. Separate. Okay. Do not touch the unclean thing, or do not do what they are doing, and I will receive you. But if you notice, guys, they are programming us. They want us to raise our children the way that they want our children to be raised, and we chase after that. And we start teaching our children in the manner in which they tell us to teach our children, and we forget what Yahweh said. This is an example of us walking away from what the Father said to do. And we're walking in the way that is convenient today. We want to spare the rod, and they want our child to be spoiled, so they tell us exactly that's what we should do. Spare the rod. You spoil the child. Well, Yahweh said if we do that, that's what's going to happen. But we do it anyway because someone else told us that. The very ones who are doing exactly that which is contrary to your Father has told you how to raise your children. And here we go, raising our children the way that they tell us. They control the media. They control what comes upon the TV. They control what you're going to show your children to the tablets, whatever the case is. All that. And we want our children to follow all those things. It's convenient. It's convenient. But Yahweh is telling us, no. Separate from this. He says, do not touch the unclean thing. Do not touch those things that move you contrary to me, because that's unclean. He says, and I will receive you as mine. At that time, I will receive you. You got to become separate, though. He said that. He just said that. Notice in verse 18 now. I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters, but it's not happening unless you come out from among secularism and stop allowing their rules to govern you. You have to be separate, because the Father is not going to direct you when you and I are caught up in what they want us to do. Our children are in their schools. Well, some of us can't help that at the moment, but hey, this is where your prayer comes in. Your Father is going to see that that's not what you want, and it's going to work to get something going and create circumstances and situations in your stream of life that's going to change that. Don't look to just say, oh, I'm going to serve the Father right now, and right now it's going to happen. In that day, this happens. No, it will come to pass that your Father will see what is going on and set everything up in your life according to the plan that He has. All you have to do is continue to do what your Father told you to do. Continue in that. If you continue in that, then He's going to receive you, because that's what He says. Okay, that's what He says. Now, let's go over to Isaiah. Okay, let's go over to Isaiah. And we're going to look at Isaiah chapter 52. Isaiah chapter 52. And we're going to look at, let's start with verse 11. Okay? 52 and verse 11. Depart, go out from there, touch no unclean thing, go out from the midst of her, be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yahweh. The vessels of Yahweh is the temple of Yahweh. Guess who the temple is? The vessels of Yahweh, that's your body. That's your body. You who has the body that the Holy Spirit is dwelling in, because you and I are allowing the light to come in. When you have that, guess what He's saying to you? Separate. He said, depart. Separate. Depart. That's what He's saying. Okay, you who have the vessels or the temple, or those of you who are the temple of Yahweh. That's what He's saying. Now let's go over to Jeremiah. Okay? Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 51. Jeremiah had the same thing to say. 51 and verse 6. Okay, now he says, flee from the midst of Babylon. Everyone save his life. Now Babylon, in this book, you read it, you may think, oh, but Babylon is way back then. back in the days of Nebuchadnezzar. No, but this is the words of the prophets. Okay, the prophet Babylon, in the prophets, Babylon is confusion. It's confusion. Flee from the midst of it. In the law, Yahweh says homosexuality is confusion. It's confusion. Okay, so flee from Babylon. This is not just homosexuality, guys. Okay, this is all the things that they're going to tell you to do. They're going to tell you to spare the rod, okay, and spoil the child. That's confusion too, because you're going to have children that's all over the place, and they're not going to reverence the things that you tell them to do. And they're not going to learn to reverence your father. They will not learn to become in unison. They will not learn how to function as a unit, because they will always be doing what is right in their own eyes. This is exactly what Yahweh called you and I away from. Moshe said, do not do as you're doing here today. Every man doing what is right in his own eyes. There's one law for everyone. Or for those who come amongst you, there has to be one law, because this is one body. Well, the world is trying to teach your children and you and I contrary to that heavenly law. We got to see it. We can't just start reading these studies that they say they have done and then implement it in the raising of our children. We have to know that there is something going on. They're not trying to get you to walk in the way. They're not trying to get you to escape from here. They're trying to hold you and I in darkness. And they're trying to get our children to stay in darkness, not to be raised in light. It's up to you to get those children, your children, in the stream of light. It's up to you. Now, let's go over to Ezra, guys. Okay? We're going to go to Ezra. Okay. Book of Ezra. Chapter 3, Ezra. Ezra and Nehemiah, right there. Ezra chapter 6. Okay, so now Ezra and Nehemiah is talking about when the children of Israel were leaving Babylon, or under the influence of the Persians, because Persia had taken over Babylon, and they were returning back home. Now, this is telling you something also, because it's trying to tell you how certain things will be for today. Okay? But you have to look at it in a spiritual sense. Okay, so this is what it'll be like today. Okay, so Ezra chapter 6. They received things from the law of Moshe now, but the law of Moshe is telling you how you would do it in the spiritual sense, because this is it's a code. He's simply giving you something that is a representation of that which is above. Now notice verse 21. It says, then the children of Israel who had returned from exile, and that's what we are, we know, until we do our thing, exile, we're returning from exile right now, ate the Passover lamb together with all who had separated themselves from the filthiness and impurity of the land, or the influence of the land. Secularism. Okay? They're able to eat. In order to seek Yahweh, the Father of Israel. In order to seek Yahweh, the Father of Israel, you and I have to separate. In order to seek the Father, you and I have to separate. We can't serve two masters. It's impossible. Let's go over to Matthew Okay? Let's go over to Matthew. Okay, Matthew. We cannot serve two masters. We have to make sure that we do what the Father says. So let's go to Matthew chapter 6. So you can't serve two governments. You can't serve Belial and Messiah. We can't be in the house of Messiah and be in the house of Belial. We can't. It's impossible. So we got to choose. Which one are we going to do? Yahweh says separate, and they say come, be a part of us. Okay? So when you come and be part of them, they teach you how to sacrifice to their gods. This is why they have human remains in the food today, because that's what they did back then. This is why they got it like that. Okay? So when you and I go, we're dealing with them in the way they say to do it, then we are participating in those rituals. And part of those rituals is to sacrifice their children to Molech, okay, and eat the flesh, if you will, of these remains. This is what's in your food. And it's in your food to enhance the flavor, they say. That's what they say. Okay, chapter 6, and let's go to verse 24. It says, no one can be a slave to two masters. Either we're going to do it the way that the world tells us to do it, or we're going to do it the way that Yahweh says to do it, because they're opposed to each other. So we can't do both of them at the same time. Yahweh says separate, they say come, let's work together as one. But Yahweh says separate from them and come and work with me as one. Well, by what they're telling you to do, they're telling you do not do what Yahweh says. Do not train your children in the way that Yahweh says to do it. Do not follow the instructions of Yahweh that He tells you to do to keep yourself unspotted. No, do what we want you to do. The White House had a rainbow flag over it, or rainbow lights. This is the head of the government of the United States. They weren't the only ones. Other heads of states on this planet also did the very same thing. This is the world. This is the spirit in the world. Yahweh is telling you to get away from the spirit of the world, because they have come to the place that they're in confusion. Okay, so here in verse 24, we continue to read. For either he will hate the one and love the other. In other words, either he will disobey the one and obey one, and obey the other, or he will be loyal to one and despise the other. You cannot be a servant to both Yahweh and, it says riches here, but it's the world. The things of the world. We can't be a part of both of them. So something has to be done. What will we do? Because Yahweh is plain. He is plain. He has spoken, and He has said, listen, you cannot be part of the world and be part of what I'm doing. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It is very clear. Now, let's go over to one more scripture here, and we're going to close there because we're out of time. Let's go to Revelations chapter 18. And let's look at verse 3. Revelations 18. And let's look at verse 3. It says, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So the nations ain't going to give you anything except for what they have partaken of as food. Because that's their nourishment. They're nourished by that, and that's all they have to give you. Okay, so all nations has drunk of this, and the kings of the earth has committed fornication with her. So guess what they're going to do? What do they have to offer you? The very same thing. They're not going to offer you that which is of your father, because they're going the contrary way. And the merchants of this earth has grown rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So the commercialism that is here, guys, is of the world, is to bring you riches. Riches of the world. Okay? But poverty in your father. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, separate from her. Separate. My people, that's what the people gotta do. My people, not everybody else, just my people. So that you do not partake of her sins or her errant behavior, and so you do not receive the plague that is coming upon her very soon now. That's what your father is telling you. You got to come out of her so you don't become part of this. This is pretty plain. This is pretty plain. Come out of her. There's no other way around this. You and I, if we say we are the vestige or the vessels of Yahweh, and we want to be part of the elect that is about, now there's a job to be done. And that job cannot be done if we're doing exactly what the Father tells us not to do. It's not happening. Clearly tells us we have to separate from that. Because all the nations have partaken of this. They have drunk it. They have learned it. It has become part of their system. Whatever you put within your body, it becomes part of you. Well, whatever the nations have taken in, it becomes part of them. Well, what do they give? They only could give what they have. They can't give what's not theirs. So if I've drank something and that's what my body has become now, when I have children, what's going to happen? What am I going to pass on to my children? That which is of my body. That's all I could do. And they have committed fornication with her. These are the kings of the earth. The kings of the earth make laws. They pass laws. The laws that you have right now and all the authority that is here right now telling you how to raise your children and the things that you should do, it's coming from her. The very one that Yahweh tells you and I not to follow. This is your government, all the governments. So he says here now, it has come to a point that you have to separate from that. Now to separate from that, it may become very hard. Because to separate from that sometimes, guys, that means separating from the ones you think you love so much. It comes down to that. Separating from that which you believe you love so much because they're taking on that which the king has said too.